This episode of the Police One podcast is sponsored by Officer Store. Learn more about getting the gear you need at prices you can afford by visiting officerstore.com.
Welcome to On Patrol Live. Got more than 50 cameras across the country following law enforcement in real time.
Hands behind your back! Hands behind your back!
Yo, start running! Back live, we've got a report of a shooting.
Back up! Back up! Hands up! Get on the ground, get on the ground.
There he is!
Master Deputy Braylon Salmon involved in a pursuit.
He's trying to come down here and fight me.
For what?
Because he's a drunk crackhead?
Bail out.
Hands behind your back! We're gonna get dog back! He's leaving.
Can I get a hibiscus berry? Anybody?
Hey, I'm sure you've all seen police officers on patrol on television. What's your take? Does it seem real? Is it cringy? Is it a good vehicle to show empathy towards officers trying to do the best they can in tough situations? Well, my guest today is Tom Rizzo, captain with the Howell Township Police Department in New Jersey, and he's an analyst on the very successful series called On Patrol Live, which airs every Friday and Saturday nights on REELZ. Tom's going to talk about the show, talk about the focuses, challenges of bringing real law enforcement situations to the viewing public. It's really unique. It's not like the edited version of Cops or things like that we've seen. And Tom's going to explain that to us. Well, if you're just joining in, you are here with Policing Matters on policeone.com, and I'm your host, Jim Dudley. Be sure and check out our YouTube video of this recording and also our podcast so you can listen to us while you run, walk, jog, or work out. We tend to run about 30 minutes or so, and we've got over 500 episodes in the archive. All right, well, Tom Rizzo, you're our guest today, and you're going to shed some light on the behind the scenes of real policing that comes into the televisions every Friday and Saturday night to the American public. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I love talking about what it is that we do. So excited to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so give us some background. Tell us about the show, how it got started. I understand you've got like anywhere from 7 to 9 different situations, different agencies all being filmed at once, pretty much live.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and they do such a nice job at having a variety and like a very diverse way of policing throughout the country, because as you well know, depending on where you are, you do it differently, right? So that's the thing that I find to be so intriguing about it. And when they label it as a docu-series, I love that because that's my wheelhouse, operating somewhere in the middle where it's not a love affair, with it, what it is that we do, but offering that transparency, yes. But growing up, I watched Cops all the time, but what I was always like so, kind of frustrated with this, but I want to understand how, understand why, I want to, so that's the thing that I really am proud to say, I think sets it apart per se. But it's so exciting, and what an amazing opportunity to sit there on the other end and be able to be like, the play-by-play. It's literally like a dream come true, no doubt about it.
Yeah, so you get to sit in the chair. You're the man in the chair, and you're talking about what the cops are doing and maybe a
Yeah,
little bit of behind the scenes of policies and
yeah,
their use of force. I'm sure, I have a lot of university students that ask me if these shows are real. And what they're usually talking about are these crime dramas or these other
sure.
sort of, law and order kind of shows that really don't depict policing in a true light at all. This is real, and
Oh yeah.
it's live. So how do you pick the agencies and the cops? I guess it would be a pretty boring show if it was real police work by one agency, following one agency around. It could just show them, drinking coffee and writing police reports all night long.
Yeah. Which again, right? So I really think it's like the cornerstone of the show is the diversity of policing because of how vastly different, like I said before, regions of the country. When you say real, oh, it's real. And again, as you well know, right? And I share with you the same experience. I'm an adjunct college professor as well. And I love being able that's really I always love the communication and the connection as to what it is that we do, but the reality as to why and how and what, right? So with the show, it's very real. What you will see, though, is again, I'm sure you've experienced in your career, the respect of privacy, confidentiality, sensitivity. Yes, that comes into play. So if there's a situation where, let's say, for instance, a fatality, and the family has not yet been able to have been advised of, God forbid, the loss of a loved one. Well, nobody wants to find that out watching a television show, right? So it's not that the viewing audience would be shielded from what it is that happened, but what'll happen is, and I was so impressed when I first saw it. There's literally like a tiered system of how this works with the field crews and the producers, and I was floored how much goes into it, so that the viewing audience gets the reality of what it is to be a police officer, a sheriff, deputy, a trooper in the country, but while simultaneously respecting what we have to respect, what it is that we would do anyway, right? You wouldn't do that if you were policing without a camera on you the same way. You wouldn't go, just forsaking what it is, the confidentiality of a juvenile or a loved one of a fatality. So those rules govern the show as well. Sure.
Yeah. So you're sitting in the chair, they're switching from scene to scene, agency to agency. Is somebody in your ear giving you context, or are you just trying to make out what you're seeing?
Both, right? So what'll happen is what we are seeing is we're seeing all of the crews that are following, and then what'll happen is what the viewer is getting is what the production team deems to be okay. That's what It's so hard sometimes. I tell you what, I wouldn't be able to do that job because I have the ADD of everything excites me, right? Clearly, I'm a high energy person. I love doing what it is that I do. And so what'll happen is when they choose, because they can't do 8 or 9 scenes at once for the viewers. So what it is when they choose the scene, the crew person, to go to, that's when we have to be play by play. If you notice, they give us like little notepads and whatnot, so that we're able to actually dictate to ourselves, oh yeah, I got to make sure I get this or this. So yeah, and then man, you better reel on your toes because you're dealing with a veteran of the television game, albeit with Dan Abrams, and there's no room for forgiveness. Okay, hey Tom, what is it? What is it that you think about this? It's like, I gotta hurry up. So yeah, you got to be on your toes. That's for sure.
And what's the feedback been? Let's break it down into two sections. One, what's the feedback from the cops that you're filming? Is there some kind of debrief after each show? What are they saying?
As far as the police department's on the show,
Yeah, yeah, the ones that are, got a camera over their back.
yeah, so they're in constant communication. So what you'll see is sometimes they'll say, well, going to one of our departments earlier in the week, and then you'll see in like the corner of the screen, they'll say previously filmed. That's what we call packages. And that because the crews are with them throughout the week filming content as to what it is that they do. So you have constant communication with things that are going on. And in those departments will also then give the show the heads up. Hey, we have a major event occurring this day. This happened, that happened. So there's that constant communication as to let's not just only rely upon Friday and Saturday nights. This also happened, which would be prudent to show, during for our viewers so that they see what it is that we're doing on a day to day.
So from the perspective of the viewer, the audience, what are they saying back to you?
Uh, Overwhelming. So this is where I feel so blessed. I go throughout the country. This is what I was doing before I did the show, and I tried to always restore what I feel to be the cornerstone of policing, what it was meant to be in terms of relationships, right, and connection. Whereas whoever it is that we're protecting, serving, arresting, it doesn't matter. It's people. So I have been. It was a sense of reinforcement for me of what I truly did believe that the overwhelming majority of the public and the citizens do support what it is that we do. And that was reinforced. I've been floored. I'm very open and public about, the fact that I'm a father of four and my children are everything to me. I openly share in my pitfalls of where I did not do a great job with work-life balance, and the viewers, I mean, oh my goodness, from supporting the fact that, my daughter's in a softball tournament to, my son and I being at the gym. It has been so overwhelming, but that's nothing more to me than an extension of what I've seen with the crew and the cast and the production team of the show. When I tell you, I mean, Jim, you were in policing a long time. We tend to get calloused because of certain things that we see and experience and feel. And this has been such a restoration of my faith as to, wow, look at how much people do support what it is that we do.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So I guess there is a
Yeah.
silent majority out there.
Oh, I don't think that they're silent because, like I said, I mean, we did, merchandise. We did, anytime we do anything where we ask for fans to weigh in, they play bingo about. They literally try to predict. The viewers try to predict what type of calls they're gonna see and who wins. I got to tell you, man, I feel like almost a rookie again with the sense of excitement. Because of it has to do with policing, but on all the emotions, right? The sincere, the serious, sometimes tragic, and then humorous, all in one salad bowl is great.
Yeah. So the bingo game, I'm sure there's a couple of drinking games going on out there. The
Yeah.
first time somebody says, "Would I do?" or "These
Yeah.
aren't my pants." Yeah, I can imagine. So your experience, how long have you been doing it now?
24 years.
In the show?
Oh, the show I've been doing. So they reached out through LinkedIn in the fall of 2023, and there was a slew of us that they had reached out to. I then went in for what they call a chemistry test. So they'll choose somebody to come in and kind of, give a test on the set. The irony was for me, I lucked out where they had asked about travel accommodation, and I said, "Well, where are you located?" And the studio was in Jersey City. So I said,
Ah,
"That's 40." I said, "Without traffic, that's 45 minutes up the turnpike for me, babe. I'm in."
nice,
so,
nice.
and you know what, Jim? I went in with zero expectation because I've suffered over the years from imposter syndrome. Even talking to somebody like you, deputy chief of a department the size of San Francisco, I'm that old-fashioned way of reverence that I don't feel like I belong in certain arenas. So I went in with zero expectation. I went with my guardian angels, my mother and my grandfather, and I listened. I said, "All right, just show them who you are." And the irony was, I was the first to go, and then I said, "Okay, I'm going to hit the road." They were like, "You're not going to stick around?" I guess they wanted me to talk to folks, and I said, "Yeah, no." I said, "I promised my daughter I would take her to the movies." So, and they were like,
Nice.
"We really think you should stick around." I was like, "Yeah, no, I got to go," because I'm thinking the whole time nothing's going to come of this.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then in December of 23, I was invited to be a guest on the show, a live show. Again, I went in, I was like, "This is surreal. I'm actually going to do this." And I brought pastries that were made with different police insignias from a custom bakery. And I left them. And they said, "What's this for?" I said, "Well, my mother always told me leave a sweet impression wherever you go." So I said, "So if this is the first and the last time I ever get to do this,
Oh,
I'll
nice.
make sure you remember me by something sweet." And
Yeah.
I got a call from after that, and it was just to keep repeating. And then it was finally announced. I was doing it for nearly almost a year, and then they offered me the opportunity to be the full-time replacement for Sean Larkin. Sticks, yeah.
Awesome. So what was the indoctrination like? Did they give you a good idea of what your role was? You kind of mentioned it. The cops are cops, right? Across the
Yeah,
country, cops are
yeah,
cops, but we do
yep,
have different policies, different rules.
yep.
Are you briefed about the agencies that you're going to be following? Are there any pre-restrictions, like their command staff saying, "Hey, we would really rather you not use the officers' names or don't take pictures of our insignia," things like that?
Yeah, so what'll happen is we don't get briefed on that. Like again, going back to me personally, I was very fortunate because yes, I've been to 46 states where I do presentations. I wrote a book. I travel, so I was very comfortable in terms of I had no doubt that I'm able to explain different type of police procedure and general tactics and that stuff because again the experience, right?
Yeah.
But what I wasn't familiar with was the TV production and how any of that worked. So fortunate, from the directors to the producers to the camera folks, and then you have a guy like Dan. Man, do they make you feel comfortable? It is not now. There's some hazing. Don't get me wrong. Just like we are in the police game. So I get some teasing and stuff like that. But what, my goodness, when you talk about a training and a socialization process that they do to make you feel part of the team, part of the family, and they show you the ropes per se, absolutely. So they make me very comfortable in terms of that. In terms of the show itself, yes, you can't speak out of turn. Like, you can't sit there and say, hey, this is the only way. So it's always, you have to be careful with your choice of language in terms of, well, I personally have done blah.
Mm.
This is the way I personally done. So it's never to say, because again, I could say my policies and procedures for where I work in the state of New Jersey would be such. It doesn't mean that they're wrong for doing it their way. They may be able to do that. And we often, the pursuits are the biggest one that we talk about. You talk about such a disparity. I feel like it's like Disneyland in some of these states that they're able to hit people at 120 miles an hour. The thought of even saying that is I would be in jail. So it's it to me, but that's what's so exciting though, to get people to appreciate these are the different, we're not all the same. Just because we wear a shield and a sidearm, we're not all the same. This is how we do it differently. And that's, I guess, my favorite aspect of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're Peyton Manning in the chair talking
Yeah.
about what the guys are doing. Hey,
Yeah.
you guys are really successful. You just got extended. You're going to
Yeah.
trot out a new season. I want to ask you about the upcoming season and some logistics, but first I want to
Sure.
take a moment and thank our sponsor, Officer Store, equipping protectors with passion. That's how we operate, and it's how we live. We understand that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit us at officerstore.com. And we're back, and I'm speaking with Tom Rizzo, law enforcement captain and TV analyst for On Patrol Live! Exclamation point. So that, to me, Tom, that sounds like some exciting stuff's happening there. What are the ground rules for what you're talking about as far as, we just talked about policy a little bit. Things like use of force, nudity, sensitive information regarding victims, right? So I know a lot of agencies have policies about when they turn off their body worn camera, or it's redacted afterwards. You guys are a live show, probably with a couple seconds delay. Um, I assume the producers and the editors are controlling that, but what are you saying when all that's coming out?
So we have no space there, right? That's the agreements, and that's what I mean where I talk about the respect I have for the process that this show, goes through before you, the viewer, sees a department being followed. There's several layers of meetings and legalities and understandings of agreement and contracts. There's a lot of that that's behind the scenes that I tell you candidly, I never understood or appreciated. I expect to turn on my television and see this, and then they say, "Oh, that's easy. A department just said, hey, put us on television." As I grew in the industry and understand it more pre-show, and as I've evolved just myself as a police officer, I know how much goes into that. When people request stuff through us outside of the television world for subpoenas. We call them Oprah requests, but I believe FOIA requests. So like I said, there's a mountain of procedural, obstacles that have to be overcome before it is that the viewer sees. So sometimes you'll have
Mm.
departments that might be supportive of the idea, but then they have to go through their city, officials and their government officials before everything gets finalized. But then the respect of, like I said to you before about sensitive topics, sensitive items, sensitive, scenes has to be understood, respected. But again, the fact that the departments ought to have to respect this is a docu-series. So there are cameras, they're catching stuff. One thing that I always say, and it frustrated me as a viewer before I knew any better, oftentimes the camera folks will catch stuff that the police officers in the on scenes don't. Whether somebody discards evidence, or
Mhm.
whether somebody is pointing, or whether somebody's. And I always said, why aren't they telling the officer? It's right there. They're not allowed. They're not
Huh.
allowed to be. Yeah, they're not allowed to be. Any type of extension of the arm of the police, or the crew on scene that's patrolling the specific district that is being followed. So when I tell you they have to be impartial and objective, that's the role, and they abide by that strictly.
Yeah, I would imagine they don't want to be precipient witnesses. They don't want to end up in court and all of
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Hey, I'm sure you've had some spectacular episodes that really resonated with the viewing public. Tell us about a couple of those where you got a lot of feedback.
So, oh man, the crews, like I said, that have these very lenient pursuit policies is literally like watching, an amusement show, because people like me, it's foreign to me, and I do believe it's foreign to the majority of the viewers. So, one particular episode, the crew from Hazen, Arkansas, was in a high-speed chase, and lo and behold, the guy, turned around, made like kind of a U-turn, and came at them head on, and they caused a collision with two of the crews involved that we were filming, and we were riding along. So when I tell you that happened, I mean the studio went silent, because it was a pretty intense scene and crash, and I was on the edge of my seat, as far as, man, oh man, I hope everybody's okay. And you talk about like something that instigated a reaction of every variety of emotion. So that was, when I tell you, probably the most intense. That was probably the most intense. And then some of the humorous things, when you see folks and the outfits, and the animals. I mean, a therapy pet is an alligator, and like you see these things, and man, you did the job longer than I've been in the job, and the people wouldn't believe. We always say, what, in the hallways of police departments, man, people wouldn't believe me if I told them, right? Well, this show offers those things to say, there it is. You can see it for yourself. This is exactly what it is that we're experiencing. So, yeah, there's been several that it's just crazy. And I think the most humbling for me was, Halloween, when they made us dress up as characters, and they made me dress up as the Tooth Fairy. So that was a humbling experience, to say the least.
I can only imagine. So yeah, stranger than fiction, some of these real life episodes.
Yeah.
It's great that you're catching them on, on film, on live, on television. Um, the empathy aspect with the viewer,
Yeah.
are you getting a response that says, wow, I didn't know you guys had to deal with this, or I have a better
Yes.
understanding of police now? I think these kinds of shows, at first I was a little standoffish. We had a couple opportunities at San Francisco to use, be offered these live cops type shows, and we usually turned them down because we were worried about liability and things like that. But I think there is really good value for the public to see what cops are really doing.
you know um let's be real, right? That's all we deal with is liability. And unfortunately for me, and I share this openly, I think that's been the number one cancer in policing in the United States, is that we overwhelm ourselves. Rightfully so. Should we be cognizant of liability exposures, risk reduction? Of course, right? And the mitigation of these risks that are most times that we could say, hey, if this was avoidable, right? No problem. But again, what always makes me laugh, not comedically, ironically, is that, but here we are. Often we're always behind the podium when a catastrophic event or a high profile event happens. So to me, why wouldn't you want the opportunity to advertise the human component? And what do I mean by that, Jim? The fact is, and I have it tattooed on my body, we're perfectly imperfect. We're human beings underneath the uniform. So, what better? Why wouldn't you want to show police officers doing what it is that they do, trying to be perfect, but acknowledging that we are imperfect because we're human beings? You talk about an empathetic exchange. Well, that's the only way we're ever going to be able to understand the motoring public. Hey, maybe he or she is just having a bad day. You know why I could get that? Because that was me yesterday. I couldn't get it right from tying my shoes to buckling my belt to sitting in traffic, right? So for me, I love the idea. And I don't think there's anything that will offer a better connection with our communities as to let's talk about transparency. How about we have you ride along with us and see what it is that we do?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I think, chiefs and sheriffs should be doing more talking about events that the public sees that they don't understand. And we have those opportunities to explain use of force and training and things like that. But, we let that narrative, sometimes a false narrative, survive out there, and it could be years in the undoing, and sometimes it never gets undone. Um, and I tell you, I fall to that myself. I try not to be judgmental of police work when I hear about it, but I heard about the Gabby Petito incident, where beforehand, cops were called. I think it was outside Sedona or somewhere in the area, and the two had been arguing, and the caller said that the boyfriend had been slapping her in the street, and then I just watched the Netflix documentary the other day on the Gabby Petito story, and it shows through body worn camera the exchange by the police officers. I think they were terrific. They did all the interviewing. They were trying to get the angles of that she was the victim, when in fact what both the suspect and the victim were telling them said that he was the victim. And so I think they did the best they could in that situation, but I think the public says, wait a minute, they stopped them. They were fighting in the street and they let him go. And then he killed her, a week later, a few days later. I think your show and shows like yours really give the viewer a better understanding of, that split second incident where you've got to make decisions and then explain them or live with them in the aftermath.
But you know what, Jim, and again, this is what was foreign to me at first, but I've come to find a very comfortable way with the show. They give people like me the platform. Nope, call it what it is. And I love that because I implore chiefs, sheriffs, unions throughout the country, just learn how to tell a story, but make sure you start the story at chapter one. Why I often say that is what I see throughout the country. It's not me being critical, is I see press conferences that are reactionary, and reactionary then starting at chapter four. It's always when the police went hands on, or when the crash happened, or when, heaven forbid, the use of force incident. Well, what precipitated that? So one of my favorite topics and aspects to cover on the show is the simple ordering a driver of a car out. And when we see people resistant to that. So I love Dan always makes a face because he knows where I'm going with this. Guys, United States Supreme Court, a police officer at any given time could tell you just exit the vehicle. You have to comply with that. It doesn't need an underlying basis. I cannot tell you how many people message me. I had no idea. So what am I trying to do? I tell people this all the time. Listen, I'm going to say this with humility to somebody like you. I have 1,000 arrests in my career, in my jacket. I have a few department records. I'm that guy, but I hold myself with humility for always, forever who I'm in front of, because I know there are things you've done that I can't imagine. I will say, though, from my own perspective, I'm getting old, man. I want people to put handcuffs on themselves. I want them to sit there and give a full confession. I say, but this is where I go through every state I've been to. Everybody shares in that. We don't want to fight. We don't want to run. We don't want to do all these things. So, what I love about the show is when people see, and that's where we get the messages, and I see it through a plethora of sources. Man, if that guy would have only listened, oh my goodness, if that girl would have just told them, why would people drive like that and put the public at risk? So I'm saying, man, I could see the avenue that bosses in this country have to be able to proudly advertise. Well, yeah, it looked ugly when we had to crash into that car. It looked ugly when we had to tackle that person. It looked ugly when we had to draw our weapons. We didn't want to. So I think being proactive and learning how maybe shows like this give that opportunity. I guess maybe that's my childish dream. I don't know.
No, I think it's needs to be done. I tip my cap to you for doing that. And I think especially in these tough times for cops, we're caught in the middle oftentimes, regardless of who's the president.
Sure.
But, 8 years ago, the resist movement really, hashtag resist, what does that mean? And so, I really wonder if there's been studies done that show, the mentality of people who say, they're seeing this resist, 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 they get pulled over by the cops and they don't comply. I mean, if you could dissect 10 of the most high profile police shootings that occurred after a car got pulled over, you'd see that resistance. Like you just said, if everybody would comply, at the end of the day, somebody may go home with a ticket or maybe not. But oftentimes police don't get the chance to dictate that. They're doing the best they can. I love the fact that you guys are showing that.
Well, and you said about a ticket, right? That's, I guess, another one of my favorite aspects on the show. What I love is from the East Coast to the North to the South to the Midwest to the West, you see overwhelmingly, and this is where I do feel that we are all vanilla on this, which is great that people see the way we all police the same in this regard. You see overwhelmingly the majority of a violation occur. Okay, there's no criminality. The person is respectful, cooperative. Hey, you know what? Oopsie, I went through the light or whatever. I didn't cause a crash. My bad. I wasn't paying attention. And what does the viewing public? What does the viewer see? In the audience is they'll say, "All right, knucklehead, pay attention next time. We just don't want to see you get hurt." And there they go off with a warning. We've seen that with low level, narcotics offenses where it's only maybe, obviously it's just a user, it's not a drug dealer, and they're not impaired or intoxicated. And all right, hey, knucklehead, you don't need a criminal record because of this. Stomp it out. Now, these are the things you've done. These are the things I know I've done. But what is it, right? We often are judged by a single occurrence, by a single cynical person. And I know I use that alliteration there on purpose, and then that will cast a shadow over an entire department. And then we have a failed leadership element to go and advertise against that, although the statistics will back you. But people are afraid as to what? Just tell the story. So again, the fact that I have a little microcosm in the big grand scheme of the universe for doing it leaves me very, very blessed.
Awesome. Hey, I want to wrap up and thank you for your time, but I want to ask you, so what's ahead for 2025? What are you most excited about for the upcoming season?
Everything and anything. And why I say it's so general like that is because I think a lot of things are being discussed in the war room as to what it's going to look like. They are constantly working on, different types of, ploys and tactics and ways to just bring our viewers what it is that they ask for and what it is that we know that people would enjoy. Everything from perhaps doing some remote sessions where we go out in the field. I know, like, if I have the opportunity to go ride out with some of these crews, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, let's do it, especially in the areas where they get to do the stuff I'm not allowed to do. That would be insane. But yeah, and just getting out more and engaging with we have such a loyal viewer base that it's in everywhere we go. So I love where I go places, then we run into people, oh, hey, you're on OPL, and hey, man, and we love that. So I think you're going to see more purposeful engagement with our viewers and getting the show on the map, even further than what it is now. I can't believe the success that the show has had, and it leaves me very much so eager to see what this year has to come, for sure.
Nice. Well, Tom Rizzo, captain of the Howell Township Police Department, New Jersey, analyst on the very successful series On Patrol Live, airs every Friday and Saturday night. And it is live, maybe a couple seconds delay. It's on REELZ and just going into another season. Tom, look forward to seeing you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, great having you. And I could see why you're there on the show. It's a great idea to have a seasoned and articulate individual such as yourself there to analyze without so much criticizing, but being that conduit between real policing and the viewing public. I think it's so important to have. Again, hats off to you for the work you're doing. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Hey, to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's show. drop me a line. Let me know what you think. Drop me a line at policingmatters@police1.com. That's policingmatters@police1.com. Let me know what you think. Be sure and rate us on Apple Podcasts and check us out on YouTube if you're only listening, and vice versa. All right. Take care. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. Hope to talk to you again real soon.